He had his hands across his chest. And so I put my hands on his and I closed my eyes and he's like, ready to go. And I'm like, yep. And the next thing I know, he shot us into space. He just took us all around to all the different stars and all the different planets.
Hello, welcome to the Happy Insights podcast. My name is Happy Ali, and I am your host. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Lisa Jones. She is the author of The Art of Living Happy After the Loss of a Loved One. And my audience knows I know all about that. But the reason I have her on the show is because she's got a lot of superpowers, which include, first of all, she's had a shared death experience, which you have to stay tuned to find out what the heck that means. She's a spiritual mentor, an intuitive channel. She's a strategic business oracle, which I have no idea what that means, but we're going to find out. And she helps people align with their truths and unlock clarity and create lives and legacies with no regrets. So, welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you, Happy. I am so thrilled to be here.
I'm excited. I just discovered you not that long ago, and we reached out to you, and you were willing to come on the show, and I'm really excited. And I discovered more about you after because your shared story, shared death experience was what got me. And I didn't even go past that before I reached out. And then now I find out there's so much more to you, which our audience is going to find out.
I know. I love how connected we are. We've just been chatting away and just sharing like all of these like amazing details that we are so connected. So
I know it's so weird. It's not weird. It's just how life should be,
I
right?
love that you say weird because for 20 years I keep trying to stop saying it's so weird, but it is kind of, but it's so aligned. It really it's amazing.
Once you start living that life, the excitement of the coincidences and the synchronicities never really go away.
They never do. It's always so I feel like a child every time one happens. I'm just so excited and it's just this awe-inspiring moment every time. And again, you and I shared probably a half a dozen stories already that we are so connected on. So, yeah.
Yes. So we were not recording and we were realizing that we should be recording. All right. So let's jump right into the big story
Okay.
and then the story that's just miraculous. And anyone who's ever lost a loved one, this story is very, very important for you to hear. I had a friend who just lost her daughter, and I'm so excited that you're here right now because I think she's going to need to hear this. So tell us what happened.
Okay. Well, so my husband was diagnosed with cancer and he was sick for 7 years. And at the very end, we called hospice in on a Saturday and they assessed him and they said, actually, he looks pretty good. It's probably going to be 2 to 4 more weeks. And I just was devastated because he really took a turn in the last 24 hours. And so they, left all the stuff for me to set up the next day. And then his brother and best friend actually arrived that day. So I wasn't alone. And my children had gone to their grandma's that night. So I had given Ian a kiss on the head and went to my daughter's room. And I was praying. At that point, I had connected with angels and I had been talking to them. I didn't tell anyone because I thought I was crazy, but they really helped me. And so I was praying to the angels and to God and just saying, oh my God, we're at the end. Please help us. Like, I don't know what to do. And meanwhile, caveat, Ian was not baptized and I was very religious and I thought that he was going to go to hell. So I was beside myself at this point. I was out of my mind with worry and fear and gosh, it chokes me up just thinking about it because it's that fear just it's all consuming. And so I feel as though then the universe, God gave me this divine dispensation, this divine gift. Because after I fell asleep, all of a sudden it was like two angels appeared and they escorted my soul out of my body. They took me to this new realm, which was the most beautiful. As soon as I got there, it was unconditional love. It was rolling hills. It was golden highway, not highways, roads. It was just pristine and clean. And off in the distance, there was, for lack of a better word, a castle. And the next thing I know, we were inside the castle and we were standing at a balcony and we were looking down And down below, all these souls were coming and gathering. And I heard an announcement, the Grand Mr. Ian Sharp is about to arrive. And then trumpets were blowing and choirs started singing. And I was elated. I was so excited. And all the spirits, I could hear them. They were like, oh my God, Ian's coming home. He's coming home. And they couldn't wait. They couldn't wait. And just at that moment, a giant door started to open, and all the spirits together all turned, he's here, he's here. And just at that moment, as I saw maybe like his foot walking through, all of a sudden there was a knock on my bedroom door where I was sleeping. Lisa, wake up, wake up. Ian just took his last breath. And it was his brother who woke me up. And all of a sudden I'm standing there just in complete bliss and happiness. And then it was like a trap door opened and I could feel my body, my soul just drop into my body. It's like it was like almost a I don't know, like a trampoline or something. And I just bounced in and I popped out of the bed and I was standing and I was in such a tumultuous moment of because I was so happy, I was so excited, I was filled with love. And yet I was like, wait, my husband just died. This is not an appropriate response. This is not normal. This is crazy. So I opened the door, ran past my brother-in-law, ran down to the room, and there's my husband's body laying on our bed. And it was just a shell that I could tell there was no spirit, there was no soul. And I was just I was elated and yet like what is going on. And so then we had to call the funeral home and they came and took his body and there were a few other things that happened. But that morning then I was blow drying my hair and thinking I need to go tell my children now because again this was kind of unexpected even though he had been sick for so long we were surprised that it happened that quickly. And I think in the long run Ian chose to go at that moment. The children were out of the house. I was not alone. His brother and best friend were there and it was like the perfect moment. But as I was blow drying my hair, all of a sudden Ian's voice was, I felt like it was his breath was on my neck. He said, oh my God, Lisa, I love you so much, but it is so awesome here. And I was like, oh my God, he's there, he's there. And it completely just shattered my whole foundation of the religious upbringing I had about him going to hell because he wasn't baptized. And it completely changed the paradigm of the rest of my life from that time forward.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you, do you believe in hell now? But you answered it
Absolutely not. No, I think we create our own hell here on earth.
here.
I think, yeah, my understanding again, take it or leave it, but just from my own experience after interviewing over 100 near-death experiencers, whatever our consciousness is here, like I believed that heaven was rolling golden hills and golden roads and things like that. And that's what I experienced. So my thought is that once we cross over, we just get to have a continuation of what our current thought process is. And I know some people like Eben Alexander, I don't know if you've heard of his story, but he was a Harvard neurosurgeon, and he didn't believe in near-death experiences until he had his own. And then he thought there was going to be nothing after death. And he started out with the worms and in the dirt. And then he had a thought, well, maybe there is something more. And as soon as that happened, he popped out and he had the most extraordinary near-death experience.
No, those near-death experiences, I've had one. They're always so amazing because it really gives you a full picture of how everything is. Now, Seth from Seth Speaks, I don't know if you're familiar with Jane Roberts and Seth. He said that because we create our own reality, right after we die, we basically go to where we are expecting ourselves to go, and then later our
Exactly.
guides will come and take us to more of a shared collective um, experience, which but each person can still create their own little experience of whatever it is. But he said first, it's if you believe you're going to burn in hell, you're going to burn in hell for a minute, and then the guides will come and slowly, or the angels will bring you to more of a collective thing because you do reunite with all your past loved ones.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because, like you said, we create our own reality. So, of course, we're going to just step through. To me, it's like stepping through a threshold. It's like you're here and then you're there, and it's still the same. And then it takes a little while to kind of release our independence.
So, my question is, did you ever have an experience like this again with anybody else that died?
Yes, I've had well, both my mom and my dad, I had premonitions of their death ahead of time, which was wild. And I'll just say real quick, my mom especially, I had gone out, I was living in Connecticut, went out to she was on Kauai. And as I was leaving, it was again like walking through a threshold. I was just pulling my bag out to my rental car, and it's like, you will be back here in a week and something will have happened to your mother. And I'm like, what? No, what? No, dismiss. And then sure enough, a week later, got the phone call she had had a stroke. So I won't go into that story. I think the most amazing other shared death experience I had was with Ram Dass, which are you familiar with Ram
Of
Dass?
course, but it's so interesting. So do tell, do tell.
Yes, yes. Well, so Ram Dass lived here on Maui, and we ended up connecting. One of his main caregivers was in the hospice volunteer program at the same time that I was getting my training. And so we became good friends. And so he started inviting me to the inner circle of experiences at Ram Dass's house. And I was so I don't know what. I mean, I had never read his books or anything, but the minute I met Ram Dass, there was just this connection. He gives this darshan, he looks into your eyes, and it's just like you could just feel his essence, you know?
So for our listeners or audience who don't know who Ram Dass is, he's like a big spiritual mentor, guru, that is no longer alive, and we're going to hear that story right now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He was famous in the 1960s. He was a Harvard professor and ended up doing psychedelics, went to India, worked with Maharishi. That was his guru. And then he just became more and more enlightened throughout his life and ended up living here on Maui. He had a stroke, and that's what really woke him up to his, his essence, I guess, and really just relaxed into being his true authentic self. And so he was just a blessing here on Maui and a wonderful person. So yeah, so it was actually December 22nd, 2019. And I don't know, I don't normally take a nap in the afternoon, but that day I decided to have a little cat nap. And when I stood up, within seconds of my feet landing the floor, I felt a big shove on my right shoulder and I fell onto my bed and I said, Ram Dass, what are you doing? And I'm like, why did I just say that? Like it just burst out of my mouth. And then within an hour, I got a text message that he had taken his last breath and that he had passed. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was day one on the 19th. On the 20th, or sorry, the 22nd. On the 23rd, I was at a chiropractor's appointment, laying on the table. And as I'm laying there, all of a sudden, I just could feel Ram Dass's energy come over me. And it was like this just hovering blanket kind of. And I'm in my mind, I said, Ram Dass, go to the light, go to the light. Lisa, you are the light. And then descended onto me. His energy just floated down on me, and I just started weeping, like like I felt the pure, unconditional love of who he was. So that was the second experience with his shared death experience, and then the third was I was invited to his home on Christmas Day on the 25th. So many of his, community were invited, and we were sitting in the room with his body and I sat and meditated for about an hour. And then I walked up and he had his hands across his chest. And so I put my hands on his and I closed my eyes and he's like, ready to go. And I'm like, yep. And the next thing I know, he shot us into space. He just took us all around to all the different stars and all the different planets. And I mean, for a good, I don't know, it felt like eternity, but I mean, it was probably I was standing there for maybe, 2 to 3 minutes, and he just took me all over the universe. And then next thing I know, I landed back in my body, and I was like, oh my God.
Wow, that's a really impressive story. I love that. I was with you, like I had the shared experiences kind of with you, not for death, but and then when you popped out of your body and went all the way there, I was like, okay, this is a very unique thing because I have similar superpowers as you. I have premonitions with dreams of deaths and births and see stuff and I feel you hear I feel. Um, I've heard like twice maybe a voice in my head, but I feel mostly. My son visits me in my body or any dead relative. If they want to talk to me, they come to me. That's amazing. You know, when you have those realizations, have you had anybody die since then? Like, how does it make dying feel? Like, as a human, you have to grieve. You have to grieve. But does it lighten the load?
Well, it's interesting because like my dog passed away. It'll be 3 years next month, and it was a really bad ending. Like I called the vet and she botched the situation. It was just awful, and it's like hard for me to even talk about because it was so upsetting. And yet that night I was, falling asleep. And the next thing I know, his energy just came in like a tsunami of love and it just washed over me. And so that's what I hold on to instead of that, awful moment of his actual death. And so for me, it's really helped. And yet I know we have to grieve. I mean, it's different. And even, for example, like my son called once. Actually, again, it was kind of a premonition. I was driving, all of a sudden I'm like, call my son. So I call, he was crying, and I'm like, sweetheart, what's wrong? He's like, oh my God, one of my best friends just got hit by a car and killed. This was a couple of years ago. And I just it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I wanted to hold the space for my son, and yet death is hard. It's not, there's no easy way around it, and you have to grieve. um but I do think being able to connect with them, like my mom. I mean, my mom is a red cardinal, and whenever I'm having a hard time or something, all of a sudden a red cardinal shows up and it just helps. And so I think that's the salve to me, are the signs when they come. And because I'll be in my grief, but then a sign pops in and it's like, okay, they're still here. I'm not alone. I'll get through this.
Yeah, I think it's been 11 years since my son died and my best friend, and I don't think they've ever stopped being very involved. I mean, there was a time in the very beginning where he would come to me, guided me to the birth of my ch new children, and told me that it was time to make a baby out of nothing, as a single gay dad. And he guided me, and my twins are 8 years old now, and the only reason they exist is because of him and his guidance and all that stuff. So, um, but it's amazing how those signs really do help. But there was one thing I learned when I was studying all this stuff that because I teach stuff, was about the reticular activating system. Do you know what that is?
Yes, I'm familiar.
So the reticular activating system, for people that don't know, is the part of your brain that's kind of like law of attraction. You get a lot of information that hits you at once, and then the reticular activating system sees what's in your periphery and cherry picks what's important to you. So when I discovered that, I was really upset because I thought, oh my God, all the 1143s and the 555s that meant something to me that I was seeing weren't real signs. Maybe they were just my brain like seeing it and cherry picking it. So I asked my son and my dead best friend, I said, "Hey, you got to give me something that is not that. Not
Right.
like you have to prove to me that it's you." And then I got an accidentally a box delivered to my house, and I live at 1343. That's my address, and his number is 1143, and his mom's 555. So I got this box that was mistakenly sent to my house and it said 1143, and the return address was 555.
Oh my
So they were
God.
both on the same page, on the same, yeah, box, in the same day that I asked for a sign. And those things are
Wow.
so powerful to really continue your communication. Not everybody has the ability to communicate the way me and you do with dead
Hmm.
people, but signs,
Hmm.
I think, are pretty much for everyone, I think.
Yes. And I think, oh, I just got chills, which to me is truth. So yeah, you just truth bomb right there. I think the key, and this was a big shift for my mom, who right after we reconnected, I was adopted at birth. She her one of her daughters was killed in a car accident, and so I've been able to communicate with her and bring her through, and it's been an amazing connection for all of us. And one of the things that my sister said to her is like, Mom, stop questioning if it's a sign. Like, if you're thinking of me, I'm thinking of you. If you think it's a sign, it is me. But every time you doubt it, it's harder for me to convince you that it's me. And that made a huge difference because then my mom started believing, and then it just started to open and blossom and get bigger and bigger. But when we have that doubt in there, it like it mutes it. It makes it smaller. It makes it harder for our loved ones to really fully engage with us. So part of it is believing in that magic, believing that that sign that you got is actually a sign and not questioning it. And I love that you got that on that same box. You got both the signs on the same box. So now you know. So now when you get a sign, you know it's not like, oh, well, maybe.
Well, I still went on the maybe route for a little bit. And because I was getting such amazing messages, I was getting dreams, I was getting letters from my son and long messages from my best friend and all these amazing stories, or these experiences in my dreams that for a second I was like, maybe I'm just a delusional grieving father, you know? So then one night I was laying down and my best friend who's dead, my son's mother, shows up at the foot of my bed and she's dead and she's jumped into my body after I recognized her and it was just like love everywhere and it was more like there was more energy in my body that I could handle. If I felt like my hands were shaking, but when I look at him, they were like not moving. So she cleared that up, really cleared it up. She's like, nope, this is real. So now, dead relatives visit. They
That
every
is
once in a
so
while.
cool. That is
It's cool.
amazing.
Life is cool. So, well, I think so. I first of all, I want to wrap this topic up
Okay.
by asking you what you really would tell someone who is recently grieving. Like, just give them something that might help them, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
before we
yeah. Well,
leave,
I
because I think the story is already so compelling that it's beautiful on the other side and everything's fine. But
right. Right.
something that you do because it's your specialty.
Yeah, I would say the main thing is to when you're in that grief, because again, that's the other thing I've noticed is that when people are in deep in grief, it's almost like there's like a bubble around you, and it's difficult for our loved ones to come through, right? Because it's almost like we have so much like swaddling around us because we're so immersed in the grief that it's hard to get those signs. And so I would just suggest that well, one of the ways is automatic handwriting, which we found out that you do that as well, and that's how I got started, was with automatic handwriting. And to just write, I have a little simple strategy called the PALS method, PALS. So you prepare by having a notepad and a pen, and then the A is ask on the paper, say, dear loved one, what would you like me to know? And then the L is listen. And the L is the hard one because you have to discern, right? Most people think, oh, I'm thinking it, it's in my head. But if you really listen and just write down the first couple things that come through, it's amazing. And like, and you don't have to like make sense of it. Just write down. Like when I first started, I would get one or two words at a time. So I just write it down, write it down, write it down. And then you go back and you're like, oh my God, because you're not in your brain, you're literally channeling the message. And then the S is always say thank you at the end because that's what keeps them coming back. It needs to be this reciprocity of energy. So try just, connecting in that way because it might get you out of that deep grief and really more concrete. And I just heard the most wonderful thing, again, no coincidence that I heard this just right before we started, about our hands and using our hands in creating, what's going on for us. Like if you're having a hard time, use your hands, create art, create writing, create a sculpture, or even touching yourself with your hands. But we get so disconnected from our body that to come back to ourselves, that's what we were given our hands for, is to be able to create. And so that's another suggestion I'd have.
I love that because when you're in creative mode, your frequency goes up.
Yeah.
So before my son died, I had already been listening to Esther Hicks a lot, and her husband had died a year before my son had died. So I watched her grief because she's very, Abraham's very public about it. And they said the dead have high frequency energy and the grieving have low frequency
Right.
energy. So they
Right.
can't communicate with you. So if you really want to communicate with your dead relatives, like find things that make you happy of remembering about it and write and try to um, lighten your after you grieve. You let yourself cry when you need to cry, but when you're not in cry mode, because you know how it
Yes,
floods your entire
totally.
system. When you're not in cry mode, like tell a joke or remember something funny. So I would purposely tell all these dumb jokes, even about the way that my son and his mom died. And it would like lift my spirits up. And that's when I would start feeling them. And the more you feel them, the less you're sad. Because I remember the first time my son just enveloped my body, it was the last time, it was the first time that I didn't cry all day.
Wow.
And it was about a month and a half or two after he had died. But it was up until that day, I cried like all day, almost every day. You know, I was just like a zombie. So I really think that these stories like yours are showing that it's not over. They're not dead. They're in a great, wonderful place. Life is very short and temporary. We'll be there soon anyway.
Yes.
I thank you for sharing your story. I think a lot of people will get a lot of good stuff out of it.
Well, thank you so much.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up. But do you mind joining me for another episode where we can discover about your channeling? And it would be
Absolutely.
now. We're going to record now, but we're going
Yeah.
to end this episode. So, we're going to say goodbye and catch the next episode because I discovered that Lisa is a channel and I didn't know. And this season is about channeling. So, see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.